Hi, Jennifer Jamison and Dominic Jones here with Crosby Scholars. This is a pre-recorded session for the third Thursday for February 19th, the 7 p.m. session in 2026. We are pre-recording this because there are other organizations that are doing other sessions that we think you might find valuable. CFNC is having one. And so we just wanted to have a Crosby spin on ours. We're sending this out to all of our seniors and our families and all the parents who had signed up for the third Thursday webinar. And then you can feel free to then go about your business and do what you would do on that night. So hopefully you find this helpful. Tonight's focus is financial aid award offer letters, and we're going to talk a little bit about financial aid. So, to that end, um, we're going to talk about key terms, calculating need, types of financial aid, award letter reviews, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our Crosby scholarships. So, Dominic, why don't you go over at a high level the key terms that we're looking for when we talk about financial aid?
Okay. The first term here is cost of attendance, and sometimes this can be a tricky thing to sort of decipher when you get a financial aid offer letter from a college. There's no standardized form or format for financial aid offer letter from any college. So some schools will list all direct costs and indirect costs, which are other terms we'll also go over. And they'll also list all the financial aid that a student is being awarded. And that helps you get the full view of what you're actually going to pay to go somewhere. So all the
Yeah, so let's
charges.
go to the next slide. I think this
Okay.
one is a good way for us to kind of understand. So, Dominic was talking about direct and indirect costs. So, direct cost is something that you're paying straight to the college. So, when you get your bill, when do bills come out? July, June, August?
Uh, I mean, just depending on when someone commits, someone will know how much they got to pay over the summer so that they can get everything signed and squared away before August comes around. Although there are people who are, still figuring that out, honestly, all the way up until move-in day. So,
There you go. Well, and I call that out because there are three types of documents that people get, and they get very confused. So the first thing they get is the admissions acceptance, which could have money on it, but it doesn't have everything on it. And that basically just says, "Yay, you got in," right? Then you get the award letter, and we're going to talk tonight about the components of the award letter. And it does take into account the high level cost. Well, some of them do of overall what you're going to pay. And then you get your bill, which will look even more different because it's just the direct cost that you're actually paying the school.
but only for the fall semester in the fall.
There you go.
So, so yeah, there are many different parts, and it is totally common to see different numbers and different things, and so we understand if there's confusion. But yeah, if you want to go ahead, Jennifer, over
Yeah, so tuition and fees, that's, and you're going to be seeing these in actual award letters, but basically that's what you're paying to go to school. Tuition can be in state or out of state, and if it's a private school, you're going to see higher tuition, and it doesn't matter about in state or out of state because it's just a private school, right? Dorms, sometimes you'll see dorm rooms and housing broken out as one line, and then food and meals broken out in another line. Like, for instance, UNC Wilmington breaks out housing and food as two separate numbers, but App State just shows housing and food as one number, right? Those are direct costs. And then transportation and miscellaneous, they're all indirect costs. So you're not directly possibly paying the school. Like you might be spending money at the school bookstore on supplies and books and renting books or whatever, but you're not paying it as a part of direct cost for that semester. All right, here are a few other terms.
So when you complete your FAFSA, um, it generates your student aid index. So this number, the FAFSA has an algorithm, and behind the scenes, it takes into consideration all the information on parent tax returns, um, and assets and things that uh, you put on your FAFSA, and it uses an algorithm to generate what the government thinks you should be able to contribute to paying for school. Um, Sometimes people don't agree necessarily with the SAI, with the student aid index the student gets, um, and they don't understand why a number is so high, and that could be because, maybe they're holding, assets that are not immediately, liquid assets that you can just pay with. Maybe it's, maybe you have an additional property you rent out. And that is something that will go on the FAFSA, and that is going to really drive up the student aid index. Maybe you have certain investment holdings, and you put those on your FAFSA, and uh, again, those are investments that are tied up, and if to liquidate those investments to pay, you would have to go through that process. So yeah, the student aid index, it can be very difficult to understand why a number has been given to a student, but uh, those are the main things that would drive that number up.
So the one thing I want to say here is that for if I was you, collect all of these pieces of data. So if you're a parent watching this, you're like, I've never seen this, right? Your student got an email with their student aid report and it has their SAI on it. Some of the schools, when they send an award letter, they will also include the SAI number on it, but not all schools do that. If you question it and you're like, that is just not possible, then you can reach out to the school's financial aid department. And if you have different circumstances, like let's say the FAFSA used taxes from like prior year, and
2 years
now
prior.
you don't work there anymore, you got laid off, or you're now are on disability, you can't work, right? If your circumstances, or maybe a parent has died, like, you know, um, these are things that you would then contact the financial aid department and then talk to them about what their process is for making sure that your current situation is in line with what need or whatever you might be getting. So
Yeah,
that's just something I want to call out. Um, the other thing, when you see your award letter, you're going to see two types of need or two types of
aid.
scholarship slash grants type things. But you're going to see money, you're going to see merit money, which is related to grades or something that you bring to the table, right? Um, and then need-based money, which most need-based money, Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, it's FAFSA and CSS profile driven. All need-based money is FAFSA and CSS profile driven, correct?
Well, yeah, you to receive something that is considered need-based, you have to complete your FAFSA, and the student index has to like fall within the range to be considered need-based.
So I guess what I'm saying is, merit money, if you did not do the FAFSA, you might see merit money on your award letter and not need-based money. And you might be questioning, why don't I have need-based money? Because you didn't fill out and prove your income to then have them be able to calculate your need.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the FAFSA, some of the benefits, if you qualify, is you get access to Pell Grants, loans, school need-based funds. Some schools have endowments. And what I don't have on here is also NC Next money. Is that correct, Dominic?
Yeah, the next NC scholarship or NC next scholarship, I can't remember. But yeah. So that is state money that is available for need-based situations. The Pell Grant is federal money that you have to qualify based on financial need. Also, federal work study, um, which is a separate thing we can cover.
But again, FAFSA drove, if you're looking at a number on your award letter and you're wondering where did that come from, it's typically driven by the FAFSA and or the CSS profile.
Hmm.
Okay. So, the other thing, right before we start looking at award letters, that I just want to make sure that you understand, because a lot of people are shocked. Oh my goodness, I just got my letter from Clemson. My kid has a 4.5 GPA. Why didn't they get a full ride? Why isn't Chapel Hill giving me big scholarships? It's so competitive, especially at highly selective schools. Many highly selective schools do not give merit money. Your GPA does not equal a full ride nowadays. It might have 25, 30 years ago, but it doesn't now. Um, Athletes, they don't go to school for free, guys. And, there's lots of rules with awards and scholarships for athletes. So that's a whole nother conversation. Um, and anyway, so these are just some myths that we just want to make sure that you understand prior to looking at an award letter. So, in a perfect world, there was a group of financial aid officers at colleges that got together and said, what is a correct way to share information about an award offer letter? And this document rose to the top. However, nobody has enforced the use of this document. So I like to see this document first because it's in the perfect world. At the very top, you're going to see your total cost of attendance, right? And then this is so old that it has expected family contribution as opposed to SAI. But understanding those two parts of the award letter and looking for it on the award letter and making sure it's there is really helpful because then you want to know what it's going to cost you to go to school. We've talked about what those should include. And you want to know what your financial aid situation is. Then I like this form because it breaks out scholarships and grants, right? Scholarships typically are merit-based money. You might have applied for it. You might not have applied for it. You might see a scholarship and you're like, hey, I didn't apply for scholarships. Sometimes the admissions process just gets you access to some money. I have seen some schools, there's a school in Alabama, actually on their financial aid website, they have my GPA equals this much money, right? So there's that. And then grants would be need-based grants. It can be endowments from the school, it can be from the state, or it can be from federal, right? And then there's other breakout sections like VA educational benefits, or then there's a calculation of the total cost of attendance minus scholarships and grants, which we consider free money. That's money you don't have to pay back, right? So that's your first calculation for the net cost, right? Then below what you're seeing are sections for loans, work study, which Dominic had referenced, and then other options, which might be parent loans, okay? So I want you to be careful. And why I like this document is because your total cost at the top, right? That's free money that you're getting, the cost minus the money you're getting. But then at the bottom, you have to pay this back or you have to do something to get this money. It's not what we would consider free money, right? So just because and it's confusing because you're going to see it in a minute on an actual award letter. Sometimes you'll see loans, grants, and scholarships all bunched together, and you think, oh, wow, look at how much money I'm getting. And actually, you have to pay back the loan, right? So I want you to consider that.
And some, just to piggyback off what you're saying, Jennifer, some offer letters that I've seen will also list work study and will list an amount of money. And that can be very confusing to people because you don't get that money up front. If it's associated with work study and you see an amount of money with that, that just represents how much the student could potentially earn, either for a semester or for an academic year. They still have to apply for a on-campus job, be hired, be onboarded, and then work hours, and they will get paid monthly or biweekly. And that number on an offer letter just shows how much they could potentially earn. So it doesn't
Yeah.
actually go into to paying off anything up front.
Now, now, I know you've worked at a college before. But work study, in my understanding of work study, other than, yeah, you got to get the job, you actually have to work. So if you only work 10 hours one week and you work 15 hours another week, you're only getting paid for the hours you work. You
Hmm.
do get that paycheck directly, and then the school is assuming that you're paying indirect costs with that money. Or is there ever a time where the school thinks you're going to pay tuition with that?
I mean, I have known situations where students were getting that money and then it wasn't going directly to paying their direct costs, but they were going down to the cashier's office and, paying on a monthly payment plan or some other payment plan that they had set up. And there are also, I should just mention, there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to work study. The way work study is a portion of the pay is paid to you by the school, and some of it is paid by the federal government. So when a school is paying you directly, uh, you know, one, every school can just decide how much they're going to pay you. And I have known situations where they're paying you minimum wage because, that money is coming from them and they don't want to pay a lot. I've heard of a lot more schools in the last couple of years raising that amount because, you could go off campus a little bit and get a job somewhere else and be making over double minimum wage. So
Mhm.
I think there are more colleges now that are increasing that pay rate. Along with that, though, there are also limits on how many hours you can work in a week. They will always limit your hours so that you never qualify to get any benefits. You have to be part-time. You cannot work 40 hours a week. You cannot even work 30 hours a week. I believe 29 and below means you will not qualify for any sort of health benefits or insurance or anything like that. So they cap you at that. So if somebody's thinking, oh, well, I can get this work study job and, make, this amount of money per hour and work 40 hours a week and then I can pay my bill, it's not going to work because they're going
Yeah.
to limit the pay they're going to give you. They're going to limit the hours you can work. So those are just
But
some misconceptions I ran into in the past, and people should be aware of.
the other thing is that need-based money, the school's never going to give you more than what you need for the cost of attendance. So I have had students who have gotten outside scholarships from either community or maybe one of our last dollar grants. And when we sent that money to the college, they reduced the work study offer. So the
Hmm.
student was like, wait, what do you mean? This is a scholarship. I shouldn't like lose out on work study hours because I got money from a community organization. But if you're like right on the line where everything's covered, they're not going to give you more benefits than what it costs to go to the school.
Yeah, legally they cannot uh, package your financial aid offer to be greater than the total cost of attendance. So you cannot exceed the total cost of attendance. They have to take things away. So
And this is why, when you compare apples to apples, look closely at the cost of attendance because the indirect cost at some schools I've seen very high. Right. So here, let's go look at an actual offer, right? And let's talk through this, right? Let me move this so that we can see what we're doing here. Um, okay, so this is an offer from NC State. And you're going to see it has the components that I like. It has, like, there's the cost of attendance, right? And they break out tuition, fees, loan fees, housing and meals, books, supplies, personal, right? Miscellaneous and transportation. So everything under housing and meals, those are all indirect costs, right? So you're probably not going to see them on your fall bill, right?
well,
Um,
those could be direct costs if you're living on campus. They could be indirect if you're living off campus.
yes,
Um, the definite indirect costs would be transportation and miscellaneous.
yes. So then over here you see, okay, this is the offer, right? So NC State does a good job of breaking out the free money, the grants and the scholarships up at the top. But notice that they still do include the loan and the work study in their final calculation here, right? So this student was full Pell eligible. So I'm assuming they had like a negative 1500 SAI, right? Because their estimated cost of attendance is equal to their their offer, which is this doesn't happen for everybody, right, Dominic? Like this is a dream. Like
And they also do a good job of showing the net price. So if you notice that 6,979, that is the net price if you don't accept the loan and you don't do work study, because the loan plus the work study equals that amount. So,
oh, I do like that. That's great.
if this student decided to decline the loan and not do a work study, they would have to pay almost $7,000. If they decided they were going to take that loan, they would have to pay uh, $2,000 if they weren't going to do work study. So, they could do that by setting up a payment plan or paying it up front, making some arrangement with the school. Or if they were, receiving Crosby Scholars Last Dollar grant or scholarship from us, that would also help cover those costs.
Yeah, so the things we want to just make sure that you see here, read this document. There's a lot of verbiage down there, but like read it very carefully so you understand, right? Um, and then the other thing is understanding, see, they got federal money, they got state money, they got NC State money, and then they got an additional, what looks like a merit scholarships, right? The loans, they can be subsidized or unsubsidized. So, there's a couple points you need to understand about this loan. Well, first off, notice that they're not lending you any more money than you have need, right? So I think, was it freshman year, you can only borrow up to $5,500?
Yes. So uh, let's look at the loan that's listed here. This is the subsidized loan. And it says 49.79, but that's really 5,000. That is 5,000 minus what they call the origination fee. So there's a fee to process your loan, and it comes out of the loan amount. So it looks to be $21 here. Um, the subsidized loan doesn't gain interest while you're in school. You don't have to start paying it back until 6 months after you're out of school. So I can tell this student is not a freshman. They're getting a $5,000 sub loan. If they were a freshman, this sub loan could only be a maximum of 3,500, and then they could get 2,000 as an unsubsidized loan. And that's Jenniffer, where you get that
Uh,
5,500.
okay.
So there are
So,
also lots of loan limits, and the subsidized loan limits they increase as you go along in college, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So I would think the student is at least a junior. Um, and the thing to know about unsubsidized loans, that sometimes that is a necessary thing for a student. Um, that loan will gain interest while you're in school. Some people, they pay that interest every month so that it's not compounding. Um, so you can start doing that while you're in school. Um, you don't have to start paying it back officially until 6 months after you're out, just like the subsidized loan, but it will gain interest, and that is the unsubsidized loan gains interest.
so there's two things I want to clarify here about loans. Um, and thank you for clearing that up because the whole subsidized and unsubsidized, that's very helpful to have. Most of you listening to this will get unsubsidized loans. When Dominic says you don't have to pay it back until 6 months after you're out of school, you have to be a full-time student taking a full course load in order to be considered a student. So if after your sophomore year, during junior year, you decide that you're not going to be a full-time student, you're only going to take 10 course hours a semester instead of taking the full times, then it will think that you're no longer a full-time student, and then it will start the clock for 6 months later. So be careful. If you have loans that you're taking from the federal government, you want to make sure that you are a full-time student every semester that you are at school, right? The other thing is you have to accept these loans. And most of the time in the document, it will have a link. Like there's like a truth in lending document where it's basically telling you you're borrowing this much money, and with interest at the end of the time, you're going to end up owing this much money. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Do you understand you're going to have to pay it back? Yes, I understand. You're going to click all the yeses. You're going to watch the little videos, understand interest. And then you say, do you want to take this loan? You're going to say, yes, accept it. The other thing I want to point out on this award letter is that notice that you can't borrow all that money at the beginning of the fall semester. So a
Right.
lot of people are like, hey, I want to borrow that $5,000 and pay my fall, and then I'll save up or work to come up with my spring. It doesn't work that way.
It has to be split evenly. Loans have to be split evenly.
Yes. And you'll notice that, your NC State's looking at that. Your first bill should be close to $13,000, right? So it's fall and spring. All right. Anything else on NC State we want to mention? And we're
They
not
smacked
picking on state. This is just an example that we have.
they smacked UNC Chapel Hill last night, so
No,
big impact.
I don't want to talk about basketball. I know you're a graduate of NC
Yeah,
State,
yeah.
so there you go. All right. So this is a private school loan, or private school award letter. Notice it looks a little different, right? It just provides these scholarships and grants and loans. Okay. I always say, private schools are a little bit more expensive, a lot of bit more expensive than your public schools, but they are very generous. They do have a lot of money to help with, right? The only thing is that you want to be careful because it shows here bill reductions. Those scholarships and grants, I would consider that free money at the top, right? The Presidential Scholarship, the Phoenix Band Scholars, the Elon Grant, right? That kind of thing. But I want you to notice these loans, right? So, first off, what Dominic was talking about before with the subsidized loans and the unsubsidized loans. But then there's a big old Parent Plus loan. Do not think that this is financial aid or free money.
No.
Do you want to explain the Parent Plus loan to us, Dominic?
Uh, yeah, I could also add some stuff about just this whole award letter. So, one thing to notice about this financial aid offer letter compared to the previous one, NC State is a public institution, and they definitely did not have as much free money as this offer letter has. So this is a private school. So yeah, a private school is going to have a higher price tag, but they're also going to give you a lot more coupons. So bill reductions as it lists here. Um, and that's just generally that's how it is. Large public universities don't have to give that sort of a merit-based aid. They have so many applicants compared to a smaller private institution. They're going to have, a lot more to offer. So that's one thing to consider when you're, looking at different options. Sometimes it's more affordable to go to a private school compared to a public school, just depending on what they have to offer you, depending on your program, depending on if you're first gen, if you're, uh, you know, what your major is, all sorts of different factors. If you look at the loans here, um, so let's look at
I'm
this
going to calculate it.
I was gonna say let's look at this subsidized loan and this unsubsidized loan. So the subsidized loan here is listed as 2565 and the unsub loan 3935. I had mentioned previously uh, unsubsidized loans being $2,000 for a year. Why is this one more? So I can tell from this that this student has a higher SAI. So their student aid index is higher, so they don't qualify for the same amount of subsidized loan money. Subsidized loan is what's considered a need-based loan. You can get that loan that doesn't accrue interest while you're in school if your student aid index is low enough. If your student index is too high, you can only get a certain amount, or you might not qualify for any subsidized loan money, but then it becomes unsubsidized loan money. And the Parent Plus loan here, so the Parent Plus loan uh, is only available to the parent. So a parent has to apply for this through studentaid.gov. Um, it does gain interest while the student is studying. You don't have to start paying it back until 6 months after the student's out of school. And uh, it can be large. Look at this loan, $17,930. If a parent qualifies, because it is a hard credit check, so you have to have credit that is good enough to qualify to receive this, um, you can take out this loan up to the cost of attendance. So if you add up all these bill reductions, add up the sub loan and the unsub loan, the reason this loan is packaged for $17,930 is because that takes you up to what I assume is the maximum cost of attendance, $66,741.06. So yeah,
Well, and to that end, I did use my handy dandy calculator. And if we assume $66,741 is your cost of attendance, then you're looking at about $24,435 in loans. That's money that you're going to end up paying back. So again, you don't have to accept the loans. And it looks like this private school was extremely generous with the student. So they did bring it down from 66,000 to 24,000 for to come to school. So, and 24,000 is within in-state levels, right? So anyway, so just keep that in mind. But I always say, look out for that parent loan, right? Um, parents need to retire. As a parent, like I don't want to be borrowing a car loan, an extra car loan every year for 4 years to be able to send my kid to school. So, all right. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out about award letter offers is sometimes you get them in the mail and they're nice and pretty, right? I just got this one in the mail, right? But sometimes you have to go search for them. So when you applied to college, you got access to your school's portal or whatever they call it, right? Wolfpack portal, Tar Heel, whatever, App State, Mountaineer, whatever. Um, but you can actively go search for your award on their portal and look for terms like financial aid or award or grants or scholarships or loans, right? The tabs might be different depending on the school. But this is an example from App State, and it's a couple years old. So, again, the cost of attendance is there. I like that they break it out. Notice that their estimates for books and supplies and personal expenses and that kind of thing are different than NC State, which is another in-state school because App State I know has like a book rental program, so they might not show a higher amount under books and supplies because they account for the fact that you might be renting your books from them. Not all schools have that. Um, then they do break out for the fall and the spring, just like we've seen on the other ones. Um, what I don't, I mean, and I graduated from App State, so App State, if you're listening to this, I'm showing you love, but you need to adjust this. If you look at the award at the bottom, the loans, the grants, and the scholarships are all mixed in there together. So I just want you as parents and students to be good stewards of what you're comparing and understand that if you see the word loan, it's money you have to pay back. It's not free money, right? They're not breaking out the free money versus the loans. So when you see that 18,000 to reduce the 26,000 to cost, I just want you to understand you're still paying those loans back.
and not only are they paying the loans back, is they might also have a bill still to cover even after taking the loans. So the total down there is 18,593.75, but the total cost of attendance is 26,353. Um, I'm not sure. Like they may still have a little bit to cover. because
They do, because if you add 18 or 14 and 8 up at the top, that's more than
uh,
18,000.
just those direct cost is more
Yeah.
than the total amount of aid. So not only are they taking out $7,500 of student loans, see, this must be a senior because their sub loan is 5,500. Um, they're gonna have to take out $7,500 of loans and possibly set up a payment plan or, you know, find other ways to cover 3,500 to $4,000.
Yeah.
And then they may still be pretty short because that is not counting the indirect costs.
So I guess what we want you to do is be careful. And we want you to like review, we want you to look at the details. And I know you think I'm crazy, but you should look at the cost at a 4-year spend, right? You shouldn't just look at the first year. So that is a great point that we haven't brought up. When you are looking at the money that's being offered you, the free money especially, you want to know for sure, is that renewable? Like, do I get that money every year? Or do I only get it the first year? And if you only get it the first year, whoo, how are you going to come up with that money the second year, right? That's a question to ask. The other thing is, if I can live on campus or off campus, right? So I am just going to show you, there's a couple documents that I think might be helpful for you. So one is, so you always want to compare apples to apples when you're comparing schools. Like, so if I was going to compare NC State to Elon to App State, right? I would want something like this. CFNC has this letter. It's a comparison, and you basically list the schools and then look at apples to apples, the tuition fees, books, supplies, right? If for the indirect cost, I would carefully look at those. And if, I might modify them from what the school represents to what you think you might be spending. So, for instance, for App State, it's just a couple hours from here, right? But Wilmington is 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. So you might spend more money on gas to get to Wilmington than to App State. So your transportation, you might adjust that indirect cost based on what you might actually be spending, right? Um, and then you can put in the free money section, right? The gift money, the scholarships and grants, um, and then understand what they're offering you. And you, based on your FAFSA, on your SAI, is the same no matter what school, but what they offer you for work study might be different based on the school, right? The loans, would different schools offer you different loans?
Well, different schools would have different costs of attendance. So, your student index is the same no matter what school it is. But because costs of attendance are different, um, depending on what each individual school is giving you grant and scholarship wise, um, that could, you know, change how much you need to take out in loans.
Yes. So anyway, so this is just a document that kind of helps you to kind of see everything in black and white, right? Now, you can go crazy like me, like I have a senior and I love a good Excel spreadsheet. And there are some free Excel spreadsheets out there. And if anybody's interested, give me a call and I'll send you this one with all the formulas. But I have basically taken CFNC's document, put it in Excel, and then I've shown freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, and I like to look at the total 4-year spend because if you can only live on campus 1 year, I want to know how much is it going to live? Like Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, you cannot find a place to live in Blacksburg. But the cost of renting an apartment is a 12-month cost, not an 8 or 9 month cost, right? Because you have to lease for the whole year. So that's an added cost. The other thing is tuition might increase 3 to 5% or more. year after year. My understanding is one of the in-state public schools, they some of them will freeze, so like your tuition is the same no, the whole time you're there. Others, I think this year was it Chapel Hill that increased out-of-state tuition by 10%, but they did not
Ooh,
increase in-state tuition.
I'm unsure.
Okay. I don't know. Anyway, so you just want to look at that. And then I like to have this after 4 year, what's my total spend, right? So that's another way. If you're really excited and crazy, you can look at that. Um, the other thing, what was the other thing we were going to talk about? I need to go back to my slides. Oh, CFNC has a great resource, and they have events. So they actually have on the 19th, the same night we were going to do this, they have an Evaluating Your Financial Aid Award offer conversation that you can listen to as well. But then they have a scholarship search. I encourage your student to apply for scholarships, especially if they're going to school in North Carolina, to use this tool. Um, a couple other things to remember. It's not too late to do the FAFSA. So if you have not done your FAFSA yet, let's get it done, right? Um, you want to understand your cost. You want to look out for those loans and work study. And you do have to, at some point, say, yes, I want this money. Please give it to me. Anything else that we wanted to cover, Dominic?
Um, I mean, if anyone has like any questions, yeah, email is the best way to contact me. Um, Apply for the Crosby Scholar scholarships. There's still time to do that. Um, you know, th that's one of the main benefits of being in Crosby Scholars is that you're competing against a much smaller pool of applicants for these scholarships. This is a this is not only a free program. At the end of it, we want to give each student a chance to receive money from the program. Um,
Yes, so
along
to that end, you want to go to www.crosbyscholarsIredell.org. Make sure you're in Iredell because Iredell students can't apply for Forsyth or Rowan money. It's only Iredell money.
If
And then,
somehow you get to the application for a scholarship and you cannot find your high school, you have gotten a scholarship link for another county. So,
yes. So there's a little box on so if you go to the home page, you're going to click on this box that says scholarships and financial aid. And then you're going to go ahead and click on Crosby scholarships. And then that's going to get you to the latest SMORE newsletter. We're going to have another document that you can do, but this one is the most up to date at the time of this recording. It has a short video on how you apply. One thing, we are using a program called Submittable, which is an external application program. When you have to use each link to apply to each scholarship. So in this document, here's the Goodwill Willpower. So you're going to click on the link for that scholarship. Then you're going to get here and it's going to say continue. And then it's going to ask you to either sign in or to sign up. So if this is your first time applying for one of the Crosby scholarships, you sign up using a non-school email, please, because your school email is going to go away and that's going to cause you problems.
yes, after, in the event you are awarded a Crosby Scholar scholarship, we need to collect information from you. Some people don't decide where they're really going to go to college until the summer, or they change their mind and they decide they're going to go somewhere else. We need to collect information from you. And if you lose access to your school email, that becomes much more difficult. We understand people travel over the summer. People are not looking at their school device or looking at those accounts. So, yes, please use a personal email that you will not lose access to so that we can get your funds to you in a timely manner. That also allows us to, in the future, communicate with you because in addition to the scholarships, there's also the last dollar grant, and you can apply for that 4 times, or you can receive that up to 4 times. So we want to be able to continue to communicate with you.
Yes, please create your submittable account with a non-school email. So this is an example. So I created an account and now I am at the scholarship application. Once you're done with this and you submit it and you say, okay, I'm done with that one, then go back to the newsletter and go to the next scholarship. So here's an example, the Mooresville Rescue Squad. If you live in 28117 or 28115, you can apply for this one. But notice you have to come back to the newsletter, click on the link, and then if you're signed in, it'll keep you signed in. But if you came back at a later time, don't create another account. Just sign into the one you created, and then you can apply for the next scholarship. So if you have any questions, reach out to either myself or Dominic, but we are extending the deadlines for our scholarships and we do have quite a few. Um, if you are interested in going to Mitchell Community College, we have the Thorson Mitchell Community College Scholarship, which is $500. That's kind of like a book scholarship. But Mitchell is sponsoring a 2-year scholarship that covers basically everything. Dominic, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so right here at the top of the description, tuition and books for 2 years, so up to $1,500 a semester. If a student qualifies for something like Pell Grant as well, I mean, um, essentially you could go to Mitchell for free for 2 years and get, an associate's degree before transferring somewhere. So, you know,
And this is only open to Crosby scholars.
right. And if you scroll up a little bit, Jenniffer, I would also like to point out the Mooresville Rescue Squad scholarship. There are many different avenues you can apply for the Mooresville Rescue Squad scholarship, but if you apply to it through Crosby Scholars, you're only competing against other Crosby Scholars, and we give out multiple Mooresville Rescue Squad scholarships. So, uh, you
Well,
know,
and I know that the Mooresville Rescue Squad through the high school, there is a FAFSA slash need component. Ours is essay driven. Um, so we're not asking about your need with our version of the Mooresville Rescue Squad. So if you went to Lake Norman High School's website, clicked on Mooresville Rescue Squad and said, oh, I don't qualify because I don't have need, that's, look at ours. Our scholarship requirements are a little bit different.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I wonder if sometimes our applications for that lag behind because there are so many ways to apply for it. And I know people apply through their schools and through, just other applications in the community. But yeah, if you apply to that specifically through Crosby Scholars, you're in a very small pool of applicants.
Yes. So we will be giving out our scholarships at our senior celebration, which is going to be April 28th. Um, I don't think I have that slide in here, but on April 28th is the we're going to give out our graduation cords. We're going to award our scholarships. It's at 6 o'clock at night. And you will get information about that in newsletters. So we'd love for you to join us. Um, Seniors, parents, if you don't have a senior, this is stuff that you can do in the future. If you are a student and you just watch this video, do me a favor, scan this QR code, enter your information, and we will give you Academy credit for enjoying this video. Um, if you don't get it immediately, send me an email because if you scan this QR code a month from now, I'm not actively looking for it. So, anyway, Dominic, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having
Um,
me.
yes, and if anybody needs anything, please feel free to reach out. Again, this is Crosby Scholars, and we're here to help. Thank you.